Yo, this is Postman and welcome back to the channel. My latest EP, Overly Elaborate Track Titles, is out now on Billegal Beats and was inspired by Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Each track covers one of my favorite archetypes to pilot in Master Duel, one for each attribute. I'm doing a track walkthrough for each of these tracks. In this video I will explain the inspiration and show some highlights of Geomathmech Processlayer Final Sigma grind. Let's dive in. This track is inspiration-wise the odd one out. I had the song concept down before I found the conceptual/fandom link with the Yu-Gi-Oh! And TGC and lore and all that stuff. This song is obviously, well at least for me, inspired by the music of Polyphia, especially the track Neurotica, which very much sparked the main riff of the track. More on that later. I really love bubbly math rock and emo guitar stuff. I also found out that it matches really well with glitch music, future bass and IDM. Shout out to Underbelly, whose Mental Kill EP really inspired me for doing such stuff. The riff felt pretty fire, so I knew the track had to represent a fire attribute monster, so I went with Geomathmech Final Sigma. Get it? Mathmech. Math rock. My brain farts aside, the whole Mathmechs series is based on these cool mechs representing mathematical functions. Don't worry, if you would want to play them in Yu-Gi-Oh! They are definitely not as hard as advanced algebra. Some cool trivia: Mathmechs are called Processlayer in Japanese, or correction, they were fan translated to Processlayer, hence the track title. And now for some highlights. The meat of this track is obviously the synth riff. It's derived from the intro/main riff from Polyphia's track Neurotica. Here's the original riff. I selected everything except the bass notes, inverted the selected notes, and edited as needed. Call me a faker/poser, but I present to you sampling, appropriating melodies of classics in other songs. It's been done a whole long time and I'm fed up talking about it. You might not like it. I don't like it either in some cases. But here it felt like something I needed to do. And rant. To spice it up, I used the Tim Henson, the guitarist of Polyphia, multi-voicer trick. This putrid green colored track you can see sends MIDI data to several tracks, including the main lead. The MIDI is processed by an awesome plugin, the Neural DSP Archetype Tim Henson, tailor-made for Tim Henson. It shifts or vocodes, I'm honestly not sure, the incoming sound according to the received MIDI data, which really spices up any riff. Then basically the whole track is a continuation, emulation and further iteration of that one riff. It's slowed down in the drop section, it's minimalized to chords in these bells, and it's even arpeggiated in these stabby plugs. I even resampled the intro riff, spliced it to a new MIDI track and used the MIDI from the riff to play the spliced version of the riff. Complicated. I'm sure it makes no sense and I might have caused some of you to get a seizure or stroke, so I'm gonna replicate it for you step by step. Step 1. Resample the riff. Step 2. Splice to new MIDI track. Step 3. New track with drum rack. Step 4. Take MIDI from the riff you used. Step 5. Paste it on the new MIDI track. And final step, you got yourself a new riff. It's a great way to generate new and cool variations. Enough about the leads, let's talk about bass. Most of the lead sounds are relatively simple sound design wise, so I dialed more sonic complexity into the basses. The main patch consists of 3 parts. An immensely overcompressed filtered saw bass, which sounds pretty shitty in a vacuum, where I automated the filter cutoff and mid-high crossover over the 10x OTT rack, which I call the all-pass rack. I've also done some post-processing and corrective EQing, and it's frankly completely ungodly. Then there's a saw bass in Serum, cause Serum is cool. It's vocoded and OTT'd, another whole kinda shebang of stuff. And then there's a granular layer for some reason. It's done in Arturia Pigments. I'm pretty sure it's one of the rare cases I use the plugin. And it's just adding some additional texture to the sound. And again, it's with an irrational number of random modulation going all over the place. The bass sounds kinda horrible without musical context, but it made sense to me in the complete composition. The bass riff in the drop is actually then resampled and edited on the audio level just to exaggerate the insanity it already is. In the second and faster drop, I used a bass line that plays the same riff as the leads, but narrowed to a smaller musical range. It's actually a really boring psy bass vital patch, but the spice comes from the post-processing modulation. I've used a MIDI sample and hold device to modulate the filter type of Riff Further Light by Minimal Audio and the distortion type of the Corrosion plugin by Sine Vibes. And together it sounds like this. Most of my tracks are really rhythm oriented, and thus the drums are really important in the mix and quite complex sound design wise. This track is in contrast clearly melody oriented, so the drums mostly serve as support for the groove. In a track that already goes bonkers in complexity, it felt wise to contrast it with relatively simple drums and percussion. However, there is an intro groove vaguely based on the prime number series. At least it was originally. I've made it, and I'm looking at it, and even I am confused by it. My brain is a hot garbage mess. Thanks for watching this video. I hope the highlights were interesting to you and you learned a thing or two. Shout out to Billegal Beats for releasing my EP on their label, and I hope to catch you next time.